Sometimes the most revealing moments happen when nobody expects them. Not during a big interview. Not during an emotional milestone. Just an ordinary Monday morning on live television, when a host who has spent decades mastering the art of the funny anecdote suddenly pauses, and you can feel her deciding in real time whether the story she's about to tell is actually safe to tell. That's exactly what happened when Ripa sat down on Live with Kelly&Mark, and admitted something that had clearly been sitting with her all weekend. She'd had an incident. Scary one. And before she even got into the details, she said something that instantly changed the temperature of the room. She'd been debating whether she should even bring it up at all. That single sentence is worth sitting with for a second, because it tells you almost everything about why audiences have stayed loyal to Ripa for so many years. She's a woman who talks about everything: her marriage, her body, her kids, her insecurities, and yet here she was hesitating. Weighing it. That hesitation is what pulled viewers in before she'd said a single detail about what actually happened. So what was the story hiding behind that hesitation? A trip to Palm Springs. A street festival. A beloved family dog named Lena. And a moment of panic that ended with Kelly on the phone with 911, locked out of her own car with her dog, her wallet, her phone, and her keys all trapped inside. On paper, it sounds almost lighthearted, the kind of mishap that happens to any pet owner on a road trip. But the way Kelly told it revealed something much more interesting than the mishap itself. It revealed how her mind works under pressure, and more specifically, it revealed exactly where her thoughts went the instant things went wrong. She wasn't panicking about the dog being trapped in a hot car, or the inconvenience of being stranded in a parking garage. Her very first thought, the one she admitted to on national television, was about her husband. Specifically, about what her husband was going to think. She described it almost like a comedy bit. Forget the dog, Mark is going to kill her. Mark somehow already knows, the dog is telepathically informing him back home. It's funny. It's self-deprecating. But underneath the joke is something quietly telling about the emotional architecture of their marriage after all these years together. Think about that for a second. In a moment of genuine stress, when most people's minds jump straight to worst-case scenarios about safety or logistics, Kelly's mind jumped to her partner's reaction. Not out of fear of him, but out of that specific, familiar dread that only exists between two people who know each other so well that they can practically hear the other person's voice narrating their mistakes before they've even finished making them. That's not insecurity. That's intimacy. It's the kind of joke you can only make about someone you trust completely, because you know, underneath the exaggerated panic, that he's not actually going to be furious. He's going to laugh, roll his eyes, and tell the story back to her wrong for the next 10 years. This is part of why so many viewers feel like they know Kelly&Mark personally, even though most of them have never met either of them. It's not because the couple performs perfection. It's the opposite. They let viewers see the unglamorous middle of marriage, the moments of mild chaos, the imagined conversations with each other that happen inside your own head before you've even picked up the phone to explain yourself. Audiences don't connect with couples who never mess up. They connect with couples who mess up and still trust that the relationship can absorb it. Now, let's slow down on the actual 911 call itself, because there's something almost cinematic about how Kelly described it. She called expecting help, and instead was met with a flat, almost bureaucratic response, essentially being told that breaking into cars simply wasn't something they did. It's a small moment, but it's a very human one. Anyone who has ever called for help in a moment of panic and been met with calm, procedural detachment knows that particular flavor of frustration. You're in crisis mode, and the person on the other end is just doing their Tuesday. What happened next is where the story shifts from anxious to almost tender. A tow truck driver showed up, said barely a word, and got the car open in what Kelly described as just a few seconds. No interrogation, no wasted breath confirming ownership. Just quiet, competent action. There's something almost old-fashioned and comforting about that image. A stranger who shows up, doesn't need the backstory, and simply solves the problem. In a culture that often over-explains everything, that kind of silent capability stands out. And then there's Lena, the dog at the center of the entire ordeal. Kelly's description of getting back into the car afterward, of her dog's head popping up with what she interpreted as an almost accusatory look, as if to say she'd been enduring an ordeal too, being approached by strangers trying to break in, is where the story fully turns from stressful to sweet. It's a small, absurd, deeply relatable beat. Anyone who has a pet knows this exact feeling. The guilt of looking into an animal's eyes after something has gone wrong, bracing for judgment that, of course, the dog isn't really capable of delivering, but that we imagine anyway because we love them and feel responsible for them. It's worth asking why a story this small, a locked car, a tow truck, a dog with an expressive face, ended up resonating with so many people? Part of the answer is timing. Kelly told this story with the instincts of someone who has spent years learning exactly how to turn a stressful weekend into a shared laugh with an audience. But part of the answer is also about what the story represents beneath the humor. It's about vulnerability delivered on her own terms. She wasn't asked about this. She chose to bring it up, and she chose to be honest about her own hesitation before doing so. That kind of self-awareness, narrating not just the event, but her own internal debate about whether to share it, is a form of trust extended directly to the audience. There's also something worth noticing about the specific fear she described having about her husband's reaction. It says a lot about the public image the two of them have built together over years of co-hosting. Mark Consuelos has become known, in the context of the show, as someone with strong opinions and a low tolerance for chaos when it comes to family logistics. The kind of husband who might raise an eyebrow at a story involving the dog, the wallet, and the phone all trapped in a locked car at the same time. Kelly, leaning into that expectation, exaggerating it for comedic effect, shows just how comfortable she is playing with the dynamic the two of them have built on screen. She's not afraid of how the story makes her look, because she trusts that the audience already understands the affectionate teasing underneath it. This is, in many ways, the emotional through line of their entire on-air relationship. Viewers don't tune in because Kelly and Mark are flawless partners performing a highlight reel of married life. They tune in because the two of them are willing to be a little bit foolish in front of each other, on camera, in front of millions of people, and to trust that the foolishness will be met with warmth rather than judgment. A locked car and a rescued dog might seem like a small, forgettable anecdote in the grand scheme of a decades-long career, but it's exactly these kinds of stories that keep an audience emotionally attached over the long haul, far more than any carefully rehearsed milestone moment ever could. There's also a quieter layer here about anxiety and self-protection. Kelly openly weighing whether to share something before she shared it is a small window into how public figures manage the tension between authenticity and self-preservation. She spent years building a persona defined by oversharing, by turning her own embarrassing moments into entertainment. But that admission, that she genuinely wasn't sure if this particular story was safe to tell, hints at the fact that even someone this practiced at vulnerability still has to make a calculation every single time. What's worth sharing? What might be misread? What might make her look careless as a pet owner, even though most people listening have locked their own keys in a car at least once in their lives? And maybe that's the most human part of the whole story. Not the 911 call. Not the tow truck. Not even the dog's dramatic little glare. It's the fact that Kelly Ripa, after all these years in front of a camera, still hesitates before telling on herself. It's a reminder that the ease and confidence we see on screen isn't the absence of self-doubt. It's self-doubt that's been worked through, considered, and shared anyway. Perhaps the reason so many people remain invested in Kelly and Mark isn't simply because they've spent years in the spotlight together. It's because audiences continue to see something genuine in the small, unpolished moments. The locked car, the imagined lecture from a husband, the guilty look from a dog who has no idea what actually happened. Those are the moments that don't get scripted. They just get lived and then generously, hesitantly shared. What did you think of Kelly's story? Did it remind you of a moment with your own partner, where your first thought in a crisis went straight to how they'd react? Let us know in the comments what your favorite Kelly and Mark moment has been, and whether you think Mark really did know somehow before she even told him.